Okay, today we are diving deep into something that's surprisingly common and, well, notoriously painful. We're talking about kidney stones. We're going to follow the entire life story of a kidney stone, from the moment it's born inside the body all the way to how we can stop it from ever coming back. So let's just start with a number 1 in 11. I want you to just let that sink in for a second. Think about your office, your friends, even a big family gathering. If there are, say, 30 people in a room, that means two, maybe three of them are likely to go through this. It's a pretty staggering statistic that's kind of hiding in plain sight. So, what is it? What is this incredibly painful condition that's going to affect 1 out of every 11 people in the US at some point in their lives? We're not talking about some rare disease here. This is something that's just lurking in the background of our modern lives. And the answer is kidney stones. The medical term is nephrolithiasis. And what's really wild is that this isn't getting better, it's getting worse. The number of people dealing with this has been climbing, and it now affects about 8.8% of the entire US population. So yeah, this is way more than a minor inconvenience. It's a major public health concern. But here's the thing. Not all stones are created equal. As you can see right here, they come in a few different flavors. But just look at those numbers. That massive purple slice, that's calcium oxalate, making up 70%. And the blue slice right next to it is calcium phosphate at 20%. So if you do the math, that means nearly 90% of all kidney stones are calcium-based. And that right there is a huge clue to how they form in the first place. So how in the world does a tiny agonizing crystal actually form inside of you? Well, the best way to think about it is like a recipe. You need the right ingredients, the right conditions, and of course, a little bit of time. So let's get into the chemistry of how a kidney stone is actually born. The whole process really happens in 3 key steps. It all kicks off with something called supersaturation. It's a fancy word, but it just means your urine is overloaded with crystal-making stuff, like calcium and oxalate, way more than the liquid can handle. Then you get nucleation. That's the spark. A single tiny seed crystal just pops into existence. And finally, you get growth and aggregation. That one lonely crystal doesn't stay lonely for long. It starts to grow and it grabs onto others, clumping together to form a stone. Okay, so what are the ingredients that create that perfect storm? A lot of it comes down to lifestyle. Diets that are high in salts and animal protein are huge factors. But you want to know the biggest culprit of all? Not drinking enough water. A low fluid intake creates this perfect, concentrated environment for stones to form. And get this, even where you live plays a role. The US Southeast is actually known as the Stone Belt. And that's probably because of a combination of diets and a warmer climate, which can lead to people being chronically dehydrated. The chemical environment inside your body is also absolutely key. You can think of it like the pH of soil for a plant. Your urine's pH level really matters. It's this delicate balancing act. If you tip the scales and your urine becomes too acidic, you create the perfect home for uric acid stones. But if you tip it too far the other way and it becomes too alkaline, you might get calcium phosphate stones instead. It's all about that chemical balance. So the stone has formed. It's been hanging out, growing quietly. But then, one day, it decides to make a move. And this is the moment a kidney stone goes from being a silent problem to, frankly, one of the most painful experiences a human being can go through. You know, this quote from our source material just captures it perfectly. It's not just pain. It's something called renal colic. It's this sudden, severe, wave-like pain that hits you in your side or your back. And it's so intense that people literally can't sit still. They're often pacing around, just unable to find any position that gives them even a little bit of relief. And what's really fascinating here is that the location of your pain can actually act like a map for doctors. It's true. If the pain is high up in your flank, the stone is probably in the upper part of the ureter. But as that stone travels down, the pain moves with it, down to the lower abdomen. And when it gets really close to the bladder, the pain can even radiate down into the groin. Your body is basically telling the story of the stone's journey. Okay, but after all that, here's a number that brings a little bit of hope. 80%. That is the percentage of small stones, we're talking under 4 millimeters, that will eventually pass all on their own. It's going to be painful, for sure, but for the vast majority of these smaller stones, your body can actually handle the job without any major intervention. But what about the other 20%? What happens with the stones that are just too big or too stubborn to pass on their own? Well, for those, we turn to the modern medical arsenal, which is designed to fight back against these painful little intruders. For those stones that are kind of on the borderline, they might pass, but they're causing a ton of trouble, doctors can try something called medical expulsive therapy. This usually means giving you a medication called an alpha blocker. Now, it doesn't dissolve the stone or anything, but what it does is it relaxes the ureter. That's the tube the stone is traveling through, which makes the whole journey a little bit smoother and faster.
Now, when a stone just won't budge, we have some pretty incredible surgical options. The right choice really depends on the stone's size and where it's located. For smaller stones that are still in the kidney, doctors can use powerful sound waves from outside the body to break them into tiny pieces. That's called shockwave lithotripsy, or SWL. For stones stuck in the ureter, a surgeon can go up with a tiny scope to either grab it with a little basket or just blast it with a laser. That one's called uroscopy. And for the really big ones, the monster stones, surgeons can go directly into the kidney through a small incision in your back to physically remove them. That procedure is called percutaneous nephrolithotomy, or PNL.
So you've done it. You've passed the stone. Or maybe you had it removed. You're in the clear, right? Phew. Well, not necessarily. About 40% of people who have one kidney stone will go on to have another one. So that first one, it's really just a warning shot.
And that brings us to the most crucial point of all. Once you've had one, the most important fight is making sure there's no sequel. And the good news is, prevention is incredibly powerful, and for the most part, it's totally in your hands.
This right here, this is the playbook. These are the 4 golden rules that are recommended for pretty much everyone who's ever had a stone. Number 1, and I cannot stress this enough, is hydration. We're talking 2.5 to 3 liters of fluid every single day. Dilution is the solution, period. Next, you gotta cut the salt. High sodium makes your kidneys dump more calcium into your urine. It's also really important to get a normal amount of calcium from your diet. Not too little, not too much. And finally, just moderate your animal protein. Following these rules can dramatically reduce your risk of ever forming another stone.
And that brings us to our final thought. We've seen the complicated chemistry of how these things form, we've talked about the intense pain they cause, and we've looked at the incredible technology we use to fight them. But in the end, the most powerful defense might also be the simplest one, and it's probably sitting right next to you. The only question is, are you going to use it?